Hey everybody, this is Greg with Flying Leap Exotics. Welcome to my first ever tutorial video. As a matter of fact, first ever YouTube video that I'm producing rather than just putting up a little snapshot of something. What I'm going to talk today about is humid hides or lay boxes. I'm going to show you how I make the lay boxes for my crested and gargoyle geckos, and these can also be used as humid hides for other reptiles. Often when I'm speaking to people in a store, at an expo, about reptiles, the subject of shed and laying eggs comes up. And so I wanted to present to you a nice, affordable way to make a lay box for your geckos or a humid hide for any other reptiles. Some important things. Why do we have humid hides? Well, here I have them for my gargoyle and crested geckos to lay their eggs. It's important so that they can lay their eggs in one spot. It doesn't matter if I have another substrate at the bottom that might have some moisture. They'll go into where the moss is and lay their eggs. So it gives them a good place to lay. It also helps them regulate humidity. So if they need a little more humidity, if their skin needs a little bit more moisture, they can go in there and then they can come back out to dry. For snakes, some other reptiles, it's important for shedding so that they can regulate that humidity and have a nice, clean, healthy shed so that they don't end up having stuck shed and the problems that come with that. Now, I do it very basic because I would like to save the money for my reptiles for their enclosure. So stuff that's in their enclosure, sometimes I have a little bit fancier stuff. Most of the stuff is basic because I want to make sure they have the best possible enclosure, including PVC board in some cases, so that they can live the healthiest life possible. And you can make these fancy, you can make them cheap. I make them cheap. So I like these because these I get at the local dollar store. And I can get 3 of these. Sometimes if you're lucky, they have the 4-pack for $1. And they're just the right size for my geckos. So, first thing is, I've got my lid, I've got my knife, and I've got this so that I don't slice this under. This, again, a dollar store find. So it doesn't really matter if it gets ruined or cut. I don't do any baking on it, obviously. You're going to want to make sure you have a sharp blade. That's important because a sharp blade will make clean edges as opposed to maybe making some rough edges. This is a big area that I can cut in, but I'm not going to cut the whole thing. And again, people don't look at these, so I'm not as obsessed with how straight my cuts are or anything. I just want to make an opening big enough for the gecko to get through. I'll remind you to always cut away from your hands. You will have to press. That's another reason to have a sharp blade. And I'm just pressing down until I see it's about the same. And I'm just making a hole that's big enough for any of the females to just crawl right through, because then they'll feel a little more comfortable going in if it's a place that's a little bit more enclosed than if I were to cut the whole top off or leave the whole top off, period. So I've done my cuts. I pop this out, and this is where you'll tell if you didn't get a cut right, but it's not a big deal. Just put it back down and you cut it again. Now, when I first started doing this, I was afraid that it would leave sharp edges. And that's important that you don't do that, of course, for the gecko, because it's going to be walking across it. But when you feel there's no sharp edge here, it's all nice and dull, I can rub my hand against it, and there's not a problem. That's something that's not going to hurt your gecko. Set the lid aside for a second, and we're going to grab one of the tubs. So with the tub, I use the sphagnum moss. The moss is great for many reasons, and this here, they sell it in a not compressed form. I just like to get the compressed form because I don't use a whole lot and it takes up less space if I get the compressed form. So I'm just breaking off a little chunk like that. And we're going to have a little bit of magic, a little bit of water. Now, what water you use is completely up to you. If you have tap water that is good, where I live, it's been voted one of the nation's best tap water several years. Most reptiles, not amphibians, but reptiles, if the water's good for you, it's going to be good for them. If you want to be extra safe, you can use filtered water. In some cases, if you want, I never recommend distilled for much. For some amphibians, it's good, but most of the time the filter is more than good enough for your reptiles, especially since crested geckos don't drink through their skin, so they're not going to be getting any of this. I don't know if you've seen how much that fluffs up. It's already soaked up all that water that I put in there. So I'm going to break it apart, turn the dry stuff face down, put in some more water. Now the moss is this moss is great. It's bacterial resistant, so you're not going to have to worry about a whole bunch of your gecko leaving stuff in there to make them sick. You can change it out as needed. I have some of my geckos that like to do their business in here, so that means I have to change it out more than I do with others. Some of them can go quite a while without me having to change it, but I will always re-moisten it at least once a week, generally with every feeding, but if not every feeding, at least once a week, I will re-moisten in here and it will and fluff it back up. And then put the lid on. So now we've got a great humid hide that your gecko can get in, will feel very comfortable laying eggs in there. And I can just pick up the hide and I can look at the bottom to see whether or not there are eggs laid in there, because they will always bury them at the bottom of the moss. So that's it for this video. I hope you've learned a lot. Feel free to drop me a comment down below. Give a follow, give a like. I'm hoping that this will be one of many tutorials and other videos that I get to put on my channel. Thank you.